The man who counts the steps. My therapist says I should write this down. She says giving the fear a name, a shape on a page, might rob it of its power. I'm not so sure. Some things aren't meant to be contained by words. Some things feed on the act of being remembered. It started, as these things often do, with something small. A feeling. I live in a third-floor walk-up, a classic Chicago brownstone with a stoop of 5 steps, then 3 flights of 21 steps each. I know the numbers because I've climbed them 1,000 times, my hand gliding along the smooth, worn wooden banister. 56 steps from street level to my door. I'd never counted them, not consciously. I just knew the rhythm of it, the familiar creak on the 17th step of the second flight. It was a Tuesday late. Rain slicked the pavement, turning the city lights into smeared watercolor paintings. I was hauling groceries, my umbrella tucked awkwardly under my arm, and I was tired. As I started up the first flight, I heard it. A voice, soft and clear, cutting through the patter of the rain. 51, 52, 53. It was a man's voice, measured and calm, almost conversational. I paused, my foot hovering over the 54th step. The sound seemed to come from right behind me, on the landing below. My heart gave a single, hard thump. I turned, expecting to see a neighbor, maybe someone on the phone. The staircase was empty. The rain drummed against the street-facing window. The only light was the dim, yellow glow of the 40-watt bulb on the landing. I was alone. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed slightly in the tiled stairwell. Silence. I shook my head, blaming it on fatigue, on the wind whistling through the old building's cracks. I finished my climb, the numbers 54, 55, and 56 feeling heavier than usual. I fumbled with my keys, the feeling of being watched a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I got inside, locked the deadbolt and the chain, and leaned against the door, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sigh of the city. The next night, it happened again. This time, I was coming home from a movie. The air was clear and cold. As I reached for the banister, the voice returned. It was closer this time. 48, 49, 50. Closer, right on the steps behind me. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. Again, nothing. The stairwell was a void of shadows and stillness. This wasn't fatigue. This was real. A cold dread began to pool in my stomach. I took the last steps 2 at a time, slammed my door shut, and for the first time I pushed my heavy bookshelf in front of it. It was ridiculous, the act of a frightened child, but I slept better with it there. The counting became a nightly ritual. It always started when I was about halfway up, and the voice was getting incrementally closer each time. It never threatened, never raised its tone. It was just a man, calmly counting the steps as I ascended. 55, 56, 57, 57. There is no 57th step. I only have 56 steps to my door. The first time I heard him count past my door, a full-body tremor racked me. He wasn't on the stairs below me anymore. He was on the stairs above me, on the steps that led to the roof, steps I never used, steps that shouldn't exist in his count. I stopped going out at night. I ordered groceries. I left work early. My life began to shrink to the dimensions of my apartment. A fragile box suspended 56 steps above the ground. The world outside my windows continued, bright and oblivious, while inside, I was unraveling. I bought cameras, a cheap wireless set, one for each landing. I told myself it was for evidence, to prove I wasn't crazy. The feed showed up on my tablet. For 2 nights, nothing, just empty stairs. On the 3rd night, as I sat on my couch staring at the 3 silent screens, I heard him start. 30, 31, 32. My eyes snapped to the tablet. The first floor landing camera showed nothing. The second floor camera, nothing. The third floor camera, the one pointing down the flight toward my door, empty. But the voice was clear. He was on the second flight now. 39, 40, 41. I watched the screens, my knuckles white. Nothing moved. The dust motes hung frozen in the dim light. Yet the voice continued, calm, relentless, climbing steps that weren't there, getting closer to my door with each number. 55, 56, 57. The count passed my door. It was on the roof stairs now. I heard a faint sound, a dry scraping, like a hand gently dragging along the wall outside my apartment. Then silence. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the door, waiting for a knock that never came. The psychological torment was bad enough. The feeling of being hunted in my own home, the voice that knew my movements, my rhythms. But then the paranormal element seeped in, poisoning the very reality of my building. I started noticing the steps themselves. The 17th step on the second flight, the one that always creaked. It fell silent under my foot, but it would groan loudly a minute after I'd passed it, as if someone had just stepped on it. The number of steps. Sometimes I'd swear there were 57 on my way up. I count, panic rising, and get to 56. Then I'd descend and somehow get to 57 on the way down. The geometry of my world was softening, melting at the edges. The final descent into true horror began last week. The voice changed. It started to comment. I was carrying a bag of takeout, my hand shaking so badly the containers rattled. As I reached the first landing, the voice began, as always. 4, 5, 6. Chinese tonight. The garlic eggplant. A good choice. I froze. The bag almost slipped from my grasp. He wasn't just counting. He was with me. He knew what I was carrying. I ran. I took the steps 2 and 3 at a time, my heart hammering against my ribs. The voice kept pace, not hurried, just stating facts. 21, 22, careful now. Don't trip. The wood is warping on the 24th step. Yes, right there. My foot landed on the 24th step and slid on a loose piece of flooring I'd never noticed before. I crashed against the wall, my shoulders screaming in pain. The smell of garlic and eggplant filled the stairwell from the spilled food. The voice was gentle, almost chiding. 24. I did warn you. I scrambled the rest of the way up, sobbing, not caring about the noise. I barricaded myself in again, but the barricades felt like tissue paper. He wasn't a man I could keep out. He was part of the house. 2 nights ago, he said my name. I was on the last flight. I had my eyes squeezed shut, just trying to make it to my door. 52, 53. Almost home, Sarah. My name. It wasn't spoken loudly. It was a whisper, a breath against my ear, as if the speaker's lips were inches from me. It carried the faint scent of old paper and dust. I didn't scream. I had no breath left to scream. I unlocked my door, fell inside, and slid to the floor, a silent, trembling heap. Last night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave. I waited until dawn, the rational part of my brain screaming that this thing, whatever it was tied to the darkness. I called a friend, asked her to pick me up. I would go to her place for a week, a month, forever. I didn't care. As I walked down the steps for what I prayed was the last time, my suitcase rolling behind me, the voice spoke again. But it wasn't counting down. It was counting up. And it wasn't behind me. It was in front of me. 1, 2, 3. It whispered, coming from the steps below me. I stopped, my blood turning to ice. He was between me and the exit. 4, 5, 6. Leaving so soon, Sarah? The voice was no longer calm. It was laced with a terrible, mocking sadness. 7, 8, 9. But you just got here. We've only just started counting. I looked over the banister. The stairwell spiraled down into darkness. I couldn't see him. I could only hear his footsteps, measured and steady, matching the count, coming up. 10, 11, 12. There are so many steps to count, Sarah. More than you ever knew. I turned and ran back up, toward my apartment, my sanctuary that was no sanctuary at all. I heard his footsteps quicken below, still counting. 20, 21, 22. Running only makes the numbers go faster. I burst through my door, slammed it, and shoved the bookshelf against it. I backed into the center of my living room, my eyes fixed on the door. The counting stopped. Silence. Then a soft, dry knock. Tap, tap, tap. And his voice, not from the hallway, but from right beside me, right in my ear, intimate and horrifyingly close. 57. I am writing this from my apartment. My friend texted, asking where I am. I told her I was sick. I can't leave. He's in the stairs. He is the stairs. The counting has stopped. Now he just talks to me. He tells me what the neighbors are doing. He tells me when it's about to rain. He tells me the number of breaths I take while I'm sleeping. My therapist called, concerned I'd missed my appointment. I tried to explain, my words tumbling over each other. She thinks I'm having a psychotic break. She's probably right. That would be easier. That would be saner. But a psychotic break doesn't warp the architecture of your home. It doesn't add a 57th step. I can hear him now. He's whispering through the keyhole. It's not a voice of air and chords. It's a voice of splinters and dust and old, dry bones. This is a good building, Sarah, he whispers. Strong bones. It just wants to be known. It just wants to be counted. He says he's the one who counts. He says everyone's home has one. A quiet thing that knows every inch, every secret. Most people just never listen. I'm listening now, and I think he's almost done counting the steps. I think he's starting to count the seconds I have left. You know, it's getting harder to tell where these stories end and my own life begins. I find them, or they find me. Scraps of text in forgotten forums. Emails from strangers with no subject line. Audio files that play nothing but static and a faint, desperate breathing. I compile them here for you. I narrate them, giving voice to the terror of others. I thought it was a way to contain it, to put a frame around the nightmare and say, there, it's in there, not out here with me. But the frame is breaking. I'll read you another story now. Another account of something that shouldn't be. As I speak these words, I can feel the details seeping out. The feeling of being watched. The smell of damp earth. The sound of something scratching just beyond the light. It's leaving a residue on me. And I'm starting to worry I'm leaving a residue on you. Listen, if you start to feel uneasy after this. If the shadows in your own home seem to hold their shape a second too long, just remember, it's just a story. I think. This one was sent to me. The subject line was just, the sounds under the floorboards. I've always been a light sleeper. The hum of a refrigerator, the drip of a faucet, the distant wail of a siren. They're all threads in the tapestry of my insomnia. But when I moved into the old craftsman house on Cypress Lane, the sounds were different. They weren't from the world outside. They were from the house itself. It wasn't anything obvious. No groaning pipes or rattling windows. It was subtler. A soft, rhythmic scraping, like someone gently sanding a piece of wood. It would start an hour after I'd turned off the lights and would continue, a metronome of unease, until the first gray light of dawn touched the windows. I found the source on my third night. It was coming from under the floorboards in my bedroom. I got down on my hands and knees, my ear pressed to the cool, varnished oak. The sound was clearer there, more defined. It wasn't scraping. It was scritching. The sound of a nail, or something very like a nail, tracing the same path over and over again on the underside of the wood. Rationalization is the first weapon in a frightened mind's arsenal. As an animal, I told myself, a raccoon or a possum has gotten under the crawl space. I call an exterminator in the morning. The exterminator found nothing. No entry points, no droppings, no signs of life in the dark, damp space beneath my house. He shone his flashlight into the gloom and shrugged. Bone dry and quiet as a tomb down there, miss. His words should have been a comfort. They froze me to my core. That night, the sound changed. The gentle scritching was joined by another sound. Faint, wet, clicking noise, like someone popping their tongue against the roof of their mouth, but slower, stickier. It was a sound that bypassed my ears and went straight to the reptile part of my brain, screaming that something was deeply, profoundly wrong. I began to avoid my bedroom. I started sleeping on the couch, a blanket pulled over my head, the TV on for noise. But the sounds followed me. Not literally, the floorboards in the living room were silent. But in the dead silence between infomercials, I'd hear it, a phantom echo in my mind. Scritch, scritch, click. The lack of sleep was making me fray. Shadows deepened at the corners of my vision. Coffee lost its potency. I was a ghost in my own home, tiptoeing through the daylight hours, dreading the fall of night. Then the notes started. The first one was tucked under my welcome mat. A small, torn piece of brown paper bag, the kind with a faint grease stain. On it, in a spidery, cramped handwriting that looked like it had been scratched with a pin, was a single word: listen. My blood ran cold. It had to be a prank. A weird, unfunny prank by some neighborhood kids. I threw it away, my hands trembling. I checked all my locks, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The next note appeared 2 days later, slipped through the mail slot. Same paper, same handwriting. It's learning you. The psychological terror of the notes merged with the paranormal dread of the sounds. I was being stalked, but by what? Person? Or the source of the clicking and scratching under my floor? The two horrors fed each other, creating a feedback loop of pure panic. I couldn't call the police. What would I say? Officer, there's a thing under my house that writes notes? They'd dismiss me as a hysterical, sleep-deprived woman. I bought a recording device, a high-sensitivity microphone meant for capturing ambient noise. I placed it on the floor, pressed record, and spent another night on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, with sunlight streaming through the windows, I played it back. The first hour was silence, broken by the creaks of an old house settling. Then it began. The soft, rhythmic scratching. The wet, sticky clicks. My skin crawled just hearing it again. But then something new. A voice. It was a whisper, thin and reedy, filtered through layers of wood and earth. It was impossible to tell its age or gender. It was just a voice, dry as dust. It whispered a single sentence over and over, between the clicks and scratches. I can taste your dreams. I vomited into my kitchen sink. The violation was absolute. This thing, whatever it was, wasn't just under my house. It was in my head. It was feeding on me. The notes weren't a threat from a stranger. They were a status report from the thing in the dark. That's when the smell began. A sweet, cloying odor, like overripe fruit and damp earth, that seeped up through the floorboards. It was strongest in my bedroom, a palpable fog that clung to my clothes and my hair. I started sleeping in my car, but I couldn't escape the smell. It was in my nostrils, my lungs. I could taste it on my tongue, that same sickly sweetness. I was breaking. The line between reality and nightmare had not just blurred. It had dissolved. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. The world outside my house ceased to exist. There was only the house, the smell, and the sounds. The final note was waiting for me on my pillow. I don't know how it got there. The doors were locked. The windows were closed. This one was longer. The wood is thin. The space is hungry. It has learned the sound of your heartbeat. It wants to taste the source. It will come up soon. It was no longer a warning. It was a prophecy. Last night, I couldn't stay in the car. The cold seeped into my bones. A foolish, desperate part of me thought that if I just faced it, if I just looked, I could understand. I could make it stop. I went inside. The house was silent. The smell was gone. The terrible, sweet odor had vanished, replaced by the neutral smell of dust and my own neglect. For a wild, giddy moment, I thought it was over. I'd imagined it all. The stress, the insomnia, it had conjured the whole thing. I actually laughed. A broken, relieved sound in the quiet house. I walked into my bedroom, feeling the weight of weeks of fear begin to lift. I sat on the edge of my bed, put my head in my hands, and cried tears of sheer, unadulterated relief. And then I heard it, not from under the floorboards, from the closet. A soft, dry scritch against the inside of the closet door. My head snapped up. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the white-painted wood of the door. Nothing moved. Then a wet, sticky click. It was in the house. It had come up. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I could only stare, my heart hammering a frantic, trapped bird rhythm against my chest. The closet door handle began to turn. Slowly, silently, it turned all the way to the stop. There was a pause, a moment of unbearable, suspended silence. And then the door began to creak open. Just a crack. An inch of profound darkness yawned from within. From that darkness, a whisper slithered out. It was the same voice from the recording, but clearer now, hungrier. "I'm here," it breathed. "Let me taste you awake." I didn't scream. I have no voice left. I am writing this from my bed. The closet door is open just that 1 inch. I can hear it breathing in there. It's a slow, rustling sound, like pages turning in a very old book. It hasn't come out yet. It's just breathing, and listening, and waiting. It knows I'm here. It has all the time in the world. It's been under the house for a very, very long time, and it's finally come up to feed. The scratching has started again, but it's not on wood anymore. It's on the inside of the closet door.